Alright, this is activity 5-8, converting a FAT32 partition to NTFS. You will probably rarely ever require this. This is for backwards compatibility in the event that you need to install a NTFS, a Windows 2000, 2003 server onto an older file system and later convert. Why do you want to convert? To take advantage of the cluster size and which is more efficient for NTFS, as well as permissions for NTFS. The FAT32 by itself allows, it was a dramatic improvement to the old FAT16 and FAT12 and older DOS and Windows 95, but it was limited in that it really didn't have any inherent security. So the only kind of security you had was share level security on a network. Other than that, it was pretty much anything that the local user wanted to do, and we don't really consider that very secure. So what we do is we want to convert, say, an old FAT32 that we have on an existing server. After we get rid of the need for the FAT32, convert it to NTFS. Why would you need FAT32? A partition that needs to be read by multiple operating systems. If you have a dual boot from, say, an older version of Windows, or if you have, say, a dual boot for Linux, or even if you could get this to work, Mac OS, I don't know how you could do that in a development platform, but those are just examples of other OSs. You need the ability to exchange. They cannot mutually read each other's partitions unless certain things are included, which are usually experimental to read their file systems and not often reliable. So what I've done is I've added a new hard drive to my domain controller here. And we're going to go under Manage. Remember, this is not a domain resource, this is a local resource. Notice here we have 3 hard drives, you remember, from my main. For my swap file hard drive that we're making all those changes to, putting the files on and adding permissions, because we don't want to do that to the system drive. And we have a third one now. So when we go to disk management, notice we have a new disk here. It is a 2 GB disk, unallocated, and this is the one that we're going to create a partition on. Notice we can't really see it. We haven't activated it yet. So we went to initialize it. And this is what you'd actually go through if you're going to add a new disk. So we're going to create a partition. The book says we want to create a partition as a primary type of 50 megabytes. We do want to assign it the drive letter F, and by default we're going to see NTFS, but we want to do FAT32, and we're going to go and call this convert, just so that we can see it. We're going to do a quick format. Say next. It's going to just let us check all of our settings to make sure they're good, primarily FAT32, 50 megabytes, quick format. We'll say finish. And boom, it's done. So we have, this says 55 megabytes because that's physically what it's going to be, but 50 logical on the drive. And we'll look at properties. And we'll see that is a FAT32 partition. Now this is going to introduce you to a command which you'll probably very seldom ever use, called convert. One thing we've got to make sure of is that we're not accessing the drive in any way. Notice that we have our F here, that's our convert. It says we want to create a folder called permission test. And this too is where it said, properties. So we have the ability to share, but you'll notice we don't have any security tab because this is FAT32, does not support folder and file level security that NTFS does. So we could create shares on the network, but once somebody got on the local machine and started accessing, they can pretty much do whatever they want on the FAT32 partition. That's why converting to NTFS is so nice, because we can set security for it and we can prevent people from accessing things. This is just like a thumb drive. There are strange security algorithms that they use for encrypting a drive, like iron key and things like that, or things to scramble a drive using local like PGP keys for thumb drives. But in essence, most thumb drives are FAT32, so unless you do something strange, you're not going to really have the ability to secure the drive unless you pretty much encrypt it. And that's why thumb drives are a real security hazard when you're talking about a network setup. Somebody walks into the server, has local access, they can pull files off of that, dump, and then they can put it on a FAT32 drive. It eliminates any and all security permissions that we've assigned to those files when they get copied over. Boom, and they have free access to any and all of those files if they were allowed to copy them. And that's why, and for that same reason, because the file system doesn't support any kind of inherent security. And as we saw here, this is a FAT32, has no security, so we're going to go ahead and make sure we don't have anything open to access that drive. And we're going to run the convert command. And we're going to tell it file system is going to be NTFS, and it's going to tell you current file system is FAT32, and so it knows that we want to convert it. We have to give it a volume of the name, and it's a 50 megabytes, so it shouldn't take very long, and it's complete. Now I went ahead and changed a little bit. I went ahead and said I wanted to call it convert instead of new volume, because that's the kind of the default for Windows sometimes. And we want to go back here to manage, disk management, and notice here now it's NTFS, and we have a security tab. And it takes the default groups and the inherited permissions from the file system itself that it gave to the disk when it created that NTFS permission, when it created the NTFS volume. So we're done here, and if we look at our folder, first off we notice is that it's changed, and we suddenly do have a security tab. And browsing from here brings up a similar box we saw earlier in the disk management. This is NTFS. This pretty much concludes activity 5-8, just a simple little utility called convert. You can also convert via the GUI. There are ways to do that, but this is just a quick and dirty way of convert. If you're going to convert an old NTFS command, an old FAT32 partition into a new NTFS partition to take advantage of NTFS security, the file and folder security. Just remember that the downside of that is FAT32 is read by many operating systems, whereas NTFS is only read really without patches or special software, is only read natively by Windows 2003 or 2008 or anything beyond that version of NTFS. This concludes our walkthrough of activity 5-8.